welcome to Perspectives. Economy, money, which drives everything, which drives governments, which drives nations, which drives politics, unfortunately, at times. In Pakistan also, money has driven politics. Money has driven people to leave the country. Money has driven people to return to the country. This government has an interesting task in their hand, which is to revive the economy. Unfortunately, the past 5-10 odd years, the economy has almost nosedived. Why such great hope from PMLN? Maybe not PMLN, but there's great hope from Mia Nawaz Sharif, because he's a businessman, he's an industrialist himself. And if I may take a position for a moment, during his first government, the first time he became Prime Minister, he made some revolutionary statements. He made statements which gave businessmen great hope, which gave industry great hope. And there was this overall feeling that, you know what, here's a man who can turn the problems away. I'm not saying turn the economy around, but can turn the problems away. If somebody takes away the problems of doing business in Pakistan, the potential, the opportunity, and the capacity to grow money in this country is phenomenal. There is no shortage of how much money can be made in Pakistan, how much this economy can drive itself. We've got the human resource, we've got the geopolitical positioning, we've got everything that is needed to make money, to have industry, to have businesses, trade. The only thing we need is someone to push the problems away from us. And Mia Nawaz Sharif did that in his first government. So we stand here at this crossroad where he once again has great potential. He has a great mandate in the form of the number of seats in the parliament. So now the whole nation is looking towards him and his cabinet and the parliament to bring a lot of magic into Pakistan's economy. We'll talk about this. My guests, a great honor on my right, Mr. A.B. Shahid, a former banker and an economic analyst. Thank you very much for taking time out. On my left, Mr. Sayem Ali, who's the chief economist at Standard Chartered Bank. Thank you very much for taking time out. Joining us over the phone will be another friend, an analyst, Mr. Shahid Hasan Siddiqui. He'll join us over the phone. And shortly, in a few minutes, we will also be joined by Mr. Shabbar Zaidi, who is a tax specialist. He's a partner at Ferguson, and also was just a minister in the caretaker government. Shahid Sahab, I'd like to start with you. What hopes should the nation have from this budget and this government? Like I mentioned, first time around, great things happened. Do we see a continuity of those great things? Or will he be able to take us out of this turmoil that we're in today or not, sir?
To be very honest, the realistic expectation would be that we should not expect a complete turnaround of the situation that we are in right now.
Okay.
What we should expect is that at least the problems that the country is facing, they are focused on specific problems and bringing them down very systematically, without creating a situation where the measures taken by the government for the corrective exercise create some kind of resentment. And for that, the government will have to have a very powerful media campaign where it will have to keep on explaining the various steps it's taking and explaining the logicality of those steps, and also promising that this is the first step, in the second step this is what we'll do, in the third step this is what we'll do, and in so much time we will reduce this problem to this level.
So milestone roadmap will have to be
Absolutely. Yes, that's what the policy should be. Now, the only worry that is there is that politicians have this craving for showing results overnight,
which has been the history.
And that's a dangerous tendency.
Sure.
So I think what is more important is at this time they should be very realistic. And one very important element that will add credibility to the corrective effort that the government will take is that the government itself, its ministers and the top bureaucrats must also show, and very visibly show, that they are all exercising austerity, saving resources for better utilization. That's very important, because unless the show of austerity is there, people will not be inclined to adopt austerity as a way of life, which is what we have to do for the next 4 or 5 years.
Even if I may interject here, even if we don't necessarily, austerity has a I actually shot up dictionary just to confirm what I'm saying. Maybe has sterner meaning. If we just stop wasting resources, if we just stop becoming scientific and logical about what we do, don't you? I mean, I'll come back to this, but I think that we have great potential. It's not like we have a hole in our boat.
Absolutely not. As far as the potential of Pakistan is concerned, this is immense. Now, I can give you the example of, well, let me not mention the name of the party. Back in October, I had written to the leader of one of the political parties that please, for God's sakes, try to fully capitalize on the potential that 4 sectors offer. Milk processing, fruit processing, animal husbandry, and fisheries. Now, these are the sectors in which there is an enormous amount of growth, because let's not forget that Pakistan is the 5th largest producer of milk,
Sure.
6th largest producer of fruits, and then just the Makran coast is 1400 kilometers long.
So immense resource available.
Immense resource, and above all, what is crucially important about this is that these are the sectors in which you don't need PhDs. Even the barely educated or even the uneducated can be provided vocational skills, and they can all become a part of these sectors, which can provide jobs for millions. You see, all you need to create is processing technology, indigenize it, and cold chains, and the packing sector.
Shahid Sahab, can you hear me?
Certainly, yes.
Shahid Sahab, how do you see the budget which is coming in, and do you feel we will get a lot of hope, and like Mr. Shahid said, we will be put in the right direction for the future or not?
See, one thing is admitted that the economy is in serious crisis.
Okay.
The another established thing is that if we prepare a traditional budget with some reforms here and there, it's not going to work. We now need that all this avenues of leakage of revenues must be strictly checked. This therefore requires that all income of all individuals living in the country must be effectively taxed, and revenues should be significantly enhanced. Now, this is a requirement without which any budget would fail to achieve the objectives. The real problem is whether the members of the parliament, even of the PMLN, which comprises of the feudals, big industrialists, and those representing feudal culture, would they be agreeable and prepared to vote for such a budget, and would the party would dare? And that is the most important requirement according to me. The second thing is that the size of the black money is almost equal to the size of the formal economy. With things computerized, would a daring action would be taken that this is converted into black economy is converted into formal economy after recovering the due taxes, not merely the accounting exercise. That is the most important thing. The third thing is that our public sector enterprises, it's not just enough which are running in loss to change the management. What is most important is that particularly in case of Pakistan Steel and the PIE and the railways, which is the government body, we have to prepare a feasibility report with technical points and to give them the bailout package. Sufficient funds would have to be provided. Otherwise, even the best man in these 3 organizations would not be able to give the results. Next requirement is that our savings ratio is one of the lowest in the world and has been declining, as also the investment GDP ratio, it has been declining. Unless effective measures are taken in addition to tax revenues to enhance this savings and to enhance this investment, the desired results would not be coming forward. In this background, when I find that the manifesto of PMLN says that by 2018, we will have a tax GDP ratio of 15%, investment ratio of 20%, and they have unfortunately totally omitted the chapter on savings. They have not touched in their manifesto. I think this is an omission, grave omission. So with this 15% tax revenues, it's not going to work, particularly when you say that all income has to be taxed. So it appears to me it will be a budget which will have some reforms and some sort of relief to the common man, but perhaps the emphasis would remain on indirect taxes like GST and others. So this will be based on the IMF conditionalities mostly, and giving concessions to the rich and the powerful. That appears to me.
Okay. Shabbar, thank you for joining us. Sam, I'd like to start with you. What Shahid Saab has said is kind of a tough call. The points he mentioned, I mean, I'm writing them, but they're all tough. Politically tough, morally tough. So what do you expect?
They are tough, but the realization was there, right? When they accepted that job, they accepted the responsibility for taking measures to make sure these issues are resolved. So, and the markets are very bullish, primarily because they do anticipate that given the strong mandate, this government will deliver. The three questions that they'll be looking at for tomorrow's budget are, number one, how this government plans to address the gap between its income and its spending, the fiscal deficit, which is unsustainable, leading to unsustainable build-up in debt. And meeting those payments has become such a big issue for Pakistan. So the second question then remains that how will we meet these debt payments that has already been accumulated? As you know, we've got large, almost $6 billion of debt payments in the next 12 months. So the budget has to clarify to us how the PMLN government plans to address this problem, because going forward, our reserves are at about $6.3 billion, and given debt payments of about $6 billion, that means we will be bankrupt. So unless some other measures are taken. So that's the other question they need to address. And number three is how do they intend to address the energy issue? Because that is the binding constraint to growth at this point. What we're hearing is not very constructive in the sense that they're talking about putting a 10% withholding tax on some of the bills above 1,000 households that consume over 1,000 units. We're hearing about increasing the tariffs by about 50%, gas tariffs by about 20%. Now, these are the same measures that the previous People's Party government also implemented. So there's nothing revolutionary about them. We want to see not just that the subsidy is reduced, but efficiency is also brought into the sector. So the line losses, the power theft, the inefficiencies in the sector are also addressed. Why should the consumers always be penalized for wrong policy decisions?
They are carrying the burden of the losses.
Correct. So these are the three decisions which will be key to how the markets react to this budget. I mean, we don't expect things to change overnight, but direction has to be set.
Shahid said very well. There's no magic wand. It's not going to change tomorrow morning, but if we see that the right steps are being taken,
if the direction is correct,
then there's hope.
Then there's hope. And, you know, we do anticipate that there'll be, the good thing is, what we've heard so far is in line with what the IMF is demanding. So the IMF prior actions, which were told to us in January of this year, that these are the conditions which the IMF will accept. If the government takes these measures, we'll move to a new loan. And the budget seems to be in line with those prior actions, which is a good thing. I
was about to just say that. You know, we see that as something very, very bad. Sure, it may not be a good thing for the long term, but as long as it caters to our medium and long term interest, well, it's all right. We do what we need to do.
We have no other options on the table.
You talk about withholding tax. I personally have been a liker of withholding tax. Mian Saab's first government, there was a withholding tax. Anybody who owned 2 cell phones, Shabbar is smiling. I think he remembers. You're probably young to remember that. And there was a tax on that. You have 2 phones, you have enough money. So I don't care. You pay so much tax. The 2% withholding tax. All those things were introduced in that government. I was actually a great fan of those things. Shabbar, how do you comment?
Let me, I think if you summarize the economic position, let me be very clear. Firstly, we have to decide, as we discussed in some program earlier, that we have to borrow something in foreign currency to stabilize our currency. That's the first thing. and leave the politics about it. And as I said in some other program, the lender of last resort for Pakistan is IMF. So that dilemma of not going to IMF should be evaporated. That should be finished. That's the lender of last resort. The IMF doesn't say how you collect the tax. They say you increase the tax. They're not. At times we give them too much detail. Isn't it? Now the test tomorrow will be that the collection of tax will be projected at 2,650 billion. This will be the figure which will be there. It is not relevant, Faisal, that what is the amount. I am more concerned from where it will be recovered. That is the main. That will set the direction of the government. Second thing, very immediate, and everybody talks about reducing the subsidies. I talk exactly the reverse. In the immediate, give the subsidies and let the industry running immediately. Then do reduce subsidy in the medium term. Sure. You know, it's a very theoretical thing that you stop the subsidy. So what I want to see tomorrow, that there should be an amount of at least 500 billion for energy subsidy. Should be. I am saying should be. People should not be afraid of it. Let us tell the spade a spade. Last year, we put a figure of 138 billion for subsidy of electricity, and immediately before that year, the amount was 500 billion. So you gave a figure of 138, actually you gave 600. So I would like to see, and he was saying, tough decision. I don't want to use the word tough decision. They are the right decisions. There's a difference between right and tough. The nation should be told that they are not the tough decisions, they are the right decisions.
I think what you touched on, Mr. Shahid said earlier, that this time they would have to lay out a map of milestones.
Yes.
And I think the nation is now mature enough that they need to have clarity. In the past, there have been political reasons not to come out.
But Faisal,
if somebody says IMF, it's like, oh, how
Faisal,
dare
if you say the word, if you use the right vocabulary, if you say the tough decision, the nation will take it differently. If you say right decision, take it differently. Use the right vocabulary for use the right vocabulary for the people.
Yep.
We use the word khazana khali. There's no word like khazana khali. All the countries always have a more borrowing than a receipt. There's no khazana in this sense. So we should use right vocabulary for the people, because those vocabularies have become old now. No, I'm not saying to tell whom, but I'm saying let us start a new inning. It's a new inning, and let us start. The team should start with an aggressive batting and bowling, both sides, and the fielding has to be done by IMF in a sense that the ball doesn't go out of the switch. So the question is,
I need to take a short break. But what I want to focus now on is, we all know what the facts are, but even on media, we shift the blame, or the governments have failed, the government has to do this, and the politicians or the government, whoever's in charge, is shy of saying what the truth is because it just sounds horrible. Shahid Saab has been a great friend and a mentor to me, and he's always spoken out that he hears the facts. So I think the nation also has to play an important role in this budget and own up to this is the fact. And we will have to work together on this. But, like you said, austerity will have to come from the leadership, and then the nation will pitch in. So let's take a short break and we'll talk about what are the facts, so what is the reality, and what do we need to do and what do we expect tomorrow. Let's take a short break. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Perspective. Shahid Saab, where do we really stand? What does the nation expect? And I'd like to open this discussion as well. We're talking the break. Do we need to go to the IMF, or are there other possibilities? Do we need to get more loans, or are there other possibilities?
Let me first just add one point to, in fact, clarify what Shabbar Zaidi was saying.
Please.
Subsidies cannot be withdrawn overnight, because that will be a shocker, and that will create negative reaction in the people. What we have to do is, we have to give a timetable, whereby we say that over this period of time, these subsidies will gradually be reduced, so that over a period of time, people keep developing the capacity to absorb the impact of the withdrawal of that subsidy.
Or change their ways of life, maybe.
Yes. Now, as far as borrowing from the IMF is concerned, In fact, the program Mr. Shabbar Zaidi is referring to is the one on which we were on the same side. And I had even to go to the extent of saying that, look, we are not in love with the IMF. The fact of the matter is that that is the only institution that will right now be in a position to provide medium-term funding support to Pakistan. We need that. You see, we have to have sufficient reserves so that the rupee does not depreciate rapidly. Secondly, in the banking profession, the convention is that any country which has foreign exchange reserves less than its 3 months import bill is rated as a high-risk country. As a result of that, the transactions from that country, when they are handled by the foreign banks, they charge extra fees. As a result of which, every import item immediately becomes more expensive because if, for instance, a letter of credit has to be confirmed, and if the income confirmation charges are somewhere about 4% because of the high country risk perception about Pakistan, then technically what is ending up is that the import cost of the goods is going up by 4%. Plus. And then the landed cost, accordingly, the duty also proportionally goes up and so on and so forth. What is important for Pakistan is that Pakistan should borrow medium term from the IMF. And why from the IMF? Because IMF is right now the cheapest store for Pakistan, because if you go to the private bond market, they will demand a premium. It could be as high as 9% because of the risk perception of Pakistan. So, now, the next question is, where do we fail? We fail while we are negotiating the terms of lending with the IMF. You see, IMF insists...
We don't get a fair deal.
No, the thing is, IMF insists on increased repayment capacity through higher revenues. The question is, why can't we come up with credible plans whereby we can show that, look, we don't have to increase tax rates. We are going to increase the tax net and increase our repayment capacity by higher tax revenue. That's where we fail.
Shahid Sahab, is there another choice other than IMF? Do we have another lending source, or do we need to borrow at all?
First of all, we must understand that IMF has already offered, without any application from us, $5 billion, which is to be repaid to us in 3 years' time. That means in 1 year, IMF will pay $1.5 billion. So what we are saying is that this nation of 190 million people, in another 5 months' time, till that time we have reserves, would unable to raise $1.5 billion and when would have been compelled to go to IMF. Number one. Number two, United States has to reimburse coalition support fund to the tune of $5 billion. Why we are not claiming that amount from the United States? They have failed to pay as per written agreement, number one. The second thing is that if you go to the departmental stores, you find luxury goods. In another next 5 months, it is just possible that we curtail the luxury item imports and we could save about $1 billion. Third point is that the rate of interest in Pakistan, Europe, Middle East, America and elsewhere is presently 1%. We pay to IMF over 4% interest plus a dozen conditionalities. Why the State Bank can't introduce a scheme whereby the overseas Pakistanis are offered that if they keep their deposits, say $50,000 and above, for a period of 1 year and above, they will be paid 4.5% interest. In Europe and America, elsewhere, we work for 0.25%. Now here, you are paying against 1% interest, 4.5% interest. And I'm sure...
Shahid, may I interject? I'm sorry, Ji, please.
These arguments have been heard before, and I have always pointed out that there is something known as country risk perception. You can go on floating bonds, but with the kind of country risk perception that Pakistan has, their rating will never be high enough, and they will not be attractive bonds. You see, you need time to get out of this trap of high risk perception.
Well, allow me to check. Mr. Siddiqui said that if we raise capital from Pakistanis living abroad, they have full faith when they're buying land in this country at atrocious prices.
Right.
I'm sure they can buy bonds as well.
You see, as far as buying the bonds is concerned, IMF has the ability to supervise the use of the funds. Does an ordinary Pakistani have the ability to ensure or the clout to ensure that the amount of money that he is investing in funds is not going to be misused by the state? Please do not overlook this fact.
That's fine. But if they can buy massive amounts of land in this country and save the money here.
I will wishing that Pakistanis will send dollars and keep in the dollar. What Shahid Saab is saying, at the moment they can also do the same thing. The only difference is that they have to convert their deposit into rupees. So at the moment there is no bar. The Pakistani can send the money, and they can deposit money. It means the Pakistanis does not have faith on Pakistan at the moment. They want to keep in dollar.
Oh, they have
no. Let me.
But they don't have faith in rupee.
That's what I'm saying. Let me rephrase
the amount of money they pump in land.
Let me rephrase it. They don't have a faith on our dollar rupee parity. Fine. So that's the right concept. So what I'm saying, I don't know why Shahid Saab is saying that tomorrow, the day after, this faith will be on rupee will be established. That faith will be established. But what myself and Shahid Saab is saying, firstly, you stabilize rupee by having $10 billion, and then you ask Pakistanis, and then you repay the IMF. So it's a very simple logic. But tomorrow this magic wand will not come in.
Happening.
That's what I'm saying.
Saim, what's your position on this?
Land the government has not confiscated so far. So maybe that's why there's still some appetite for buying land, but there's very little appetite for keeping dollars in your...
They have never confiscated. They have
never.
They have converted.
Converted. That's what I'm saying.
So
they don't have faith on rupee.
$11 billion in 1998. $11 billion of foreign currency accounts. Pakistanis. Today we have 5. So even after 15 years, we have not been able to mend that confidence.
Let me just add.
Let me add. All that he has probably erred in is saying that they were confiscated. They were not. They were frozen. But the fact of the matter is, to that extent, he is right that it had a very negative impact on the savers, and we no longer have those kinds of high deposits that we used to have.
But Shahid Saab, let us be fair. The problem is we don't have a faith on rupee. We have faith on Pakistan. That's what I'm saying. The question is how the rupee be stabilized. The first question is stabilize rupee.
But coming back to the question on the IMF,
that's what I'm saying.
And that you can do only if you have a stable reserve.
You have to stabilize rupee. That is stabilization of rupee. Let us be clear. That for stabilizing the rupee.
So we can raise some money from overseas Pakistan. But the size of the money that we require, $6 to $9 billion, I don't think there's any other option on the table other than to go to the IMF.
Okay. Siddiqui Saab,
that is the reason
everybody seems to have a collective view here. How would you comment?
I couldn't listen to the guest, but I have certain points. Number one, that IMF conditionalities, they are well known. IMF conditionalities and the agenda of PMLN published in 2013 are opposite to each other. And the People's Party and Muslim League knows it. Number one. The second thing is that IMF loan was taken in November 2008, and since December 2008, and subsequently, and perhaps 4 or 5 times in discussions with you, I have been saying, and that is on record and also writing, Pakistan will not be able to repay the installment in 2013 of the loan taken in November 2008. If People's Party was slating what these opposition parties were doing, why they were waiting for the 11th hour, and now raising why is that we can't pay the loan. As the opposition party, the biggest opposition party, what role was played by the PMLN to raise an alarm, why not we are increasing our reserves? That is my second point. The third point I am trying to mention is that Mr. Nawaz Sharif, when he was Prime Minister in 97, he said some things and I would like to quote him. Due to the conditionalities of IMF, we are unable to prepare our own budget. This was his statement. So this time we are not real relatives. This time again, and we'll have conditions will be imposed. And Mr. Nawaz Sharif has talked about this Khud Mukhtari, we call it a sovereignty after coming into power. The third point is that if overseas Pakistanis don't have the confidence, would not for the sake of the nation, Mr. Nawaz Sharif and his party hold a parliamentary party meeting and they decide we will bring our own deposits, overseas legal deposits to Pakistani banks so that the confidence of overseas Pakistanis are enhanced and then announce a 4.5% interest. Next point is that when this nuclear blast was done in May 2008, not only loans were not coming, but sanctions were imposed by Pakistan, by the international community and the international financial institutions. And it is a matter of record that reserves increased after the sanction, and that was acknowledged by the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif at that time. Why we are apprehending this time that if IMF loan doesn't come, we will be destroyed. So I think we are. It appears to me that we are representing IMF point of view, not the point of view of the Pakistani nation. This is very important. And next point is that Saudi Arab is likely to offer a couple of $1 billion at least on deferred payment basis the oil. IMF is paying only $1.5 billion.
Okay.
Our reserves are announced. Last point.
Sorry, Shabbar, please.
Let me answer it. After the bomb blast,
May I check why are we dwelling?
No.
Something happened 20 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. I want to give the broad state. At that time, we borrowed from market and then we set the reserve. The question is very simple. We have an import bill of 45.
May I just one quick second? You said the market remembers. How come the market doesn't remember the amount of money they sink in the US because funds eat up their money forever? How come the market doesn't remember what Asia does to them? How come the market doesn't remember what Europe does to them? How come they only remember what Pakistan does to them? I think it's very, very unfair. And I find I'm very touchy about it. I mean, what America has done to the world, what the banks and the funds have done to the world, the Morgans and the...
That's what I am not saying market.
Nobody says, people never invest in America anymore.
But I am talking of simple account arithmetic logic. We have a bill of 45 billion rupees import.
Yeah,
dollars billion import, 25 billion export, and we have a 15 billion on a higher side remittances. So we have a negative of 2. This time we'll be ending up negative 2. And we get 2 out of 6, then we left with 4. And we need 14. A simple accounting.
Basic arithmetic.
It's more simple than the thing about it. If Shahid Sahib can get $10 billion from Pakistani deposit, I will be the happiest person. But I know that will not happen. I know the Saudi Arabia.
But not immediately.
So, that's what I'm saying. Not immediately. Not immediately. So let us talk about 14, let us talk about 15, and then 16, 17, you correct it. The problem is that we make the issue at a time when we should not make the issue. At the moment, and 30th June 2013, we will be having a deposit of less than 4 or 5. With $5 billion deposit, you can never stabilize Pakistani rupee. Simple accounting, economic logic.
It will start losing.
It will start losing, and that will put a special burden on everything, including the trust which Pakistanis have on rupee. So
okay, I want to. This is a point.
There are simple logic and arithmetic logic, not a politics.
Okay, I want all of you to just quickly comment on one thing. This government's just come in. Where we stand today, it's not their fault.
Not their fault. Yes.
Wherever we stand today.
Not their fault.
Where do we stand today, sir? And what do we need to do as a nation to work together and come out of it? Simple things.
See, as being discussed, we have to stabilize the rupee. And the rupee cannot be stabilized without having a reasonable amount of foreign exchange reserves, so that you can assure the world that if there is need for foreign exchange, we have sufficient foreign exchange, and the rupee doesn't have to depreciate because we'll have to go and buy it. Right? So I don't think we should make it a sentimental issue that we will not borrow from the IMF. You don't have a choice. Nobody is in love with IMF, but you need that for at least 3 years. What is important is that once you get those reserves, you may take the corrective actions so that your trade deficit starts contracting. And that can happen only if you promote imports. $1 billion every year is gradually reduced. That's what is required. You see, we have to have a bit of rationality in the economic policies. We should not be whimsical about it that since I don't like that person's face, I'm not going to borrow money from him. That's not what
you have to do. What you have to do.
You have to do what you have.
Fundamental rule of business.
Yes. I think what we are not stressing that we should reduce our import bill. Unfortunately, we are only stressing on export promotion. Our import bill is 45.
It has to be cut down.
It has to be cut down, and that can be cut down.
That's domestic commercial altogether.
When you talk about austerity, I am not concerned about austerity on the card. I am austerity on a 45 billion amount. That is where
not the petty cash.
Not the petty cash. We are talking about the petty cashes. Not petty cash. We say they should decide that we will reduce we will have a positive balance.
So let me rephrase those. How will the government close down that gap between its spending and its income? We know last year there was a report out that 70% of our parliamentarians don't bother filing their tax returns, right? Should that not be the starting point for pushing through reforms? How can I ask somebody else to pay when I don't pay myself? So it can be done. We don't need to go to the IMF if these things can be done. Number two, energy policy. I mean, how is it not everybody's fault? How is it not the fault of every single government since 1976 that our energy mix has gone from hydro production towards really expensive oil-based production? It is every single government's fault that has followed since. Whether it is the military governments, whether it is the...
Whoever they may be.
Whoever they may be. So they're all responsible for this mess that we're in. He's talking about our trade deficits. The trade deficits are because of our energy problem, right? Out of that 40 billion, almost 14 to 15 billion dollars is just oil imports. So unless we correct these two issues, we'll continue with this cycle of 3-4 years of growth, reserves running out, us going back to the IMF, and the cycle starts all over again. So we'll have this interrupted growth story. We'll not be able to catch up with the rest of the emerging markets unless we correct these two fault lines within our system.
Siddiqui Sahab, short and sweet, what are we going to have to do as a nation collectively with the government to get some relief for ourselves?
In my humble opinion, if we only have 3 points implemented which were covered in the manifesto of Pakistan Unionist Party, I think 70% of the economic problems will be resolved. Only 3 points of the manifesto. The first is to tax all income without any exemptions, and emphasis on direct taxes, not on indirect tax. Number one. Number two, to broaden the tax base through IT database. Now we have got the IT database of 3.9 million people, and I have calculated that if the taxes are recovered on the income, concealed income, out of which these assets were created, that will give us 1,000 billion rupees in 1 year's time. Number three, to stop whitening the black money. This is all the three are mentioned in the manifesto of Pakistan Muslim League. And would the party members who are elected would be prepared to accept these conditional deals, but they have fought elections on these. And I think if you do not allow them to deviate from these, and then perhaps that will resolve most of the problems and will bring relief to the common man. So the solution is not on regressive reforms, but on implementing the agenda, and that will bring us through.
Shahid, I want a quick comment on the black economy. I missed that during the show. How is it possible to eliminate the cash economy, the parallel economy, the black undocumented economies in this country?
If you look at the size of it, the first reaction would be it's impossible. But nothing is impossible. You have to make a beginning. And I can tell you that in this regard, how to make a beginning, PMLN was provided a proposal as early as 1997, a comprehensive proposal. A copy of that is also lying with the Federal Board of Revenue. It's not impossible. You have to start the process.
It just becomes more impossible every year.
Absolutely.
As it grows bigger and bigger.
If you don't act, then it's going to become more and more huge.
Very quick comment, Shabbar, on the issue.
I think the nation has to demonstrate that they want a change. And I think this government can start a new inning, but they have to change their paradigm. If they continue on the old paradigm, irrespective of whatever they have written in the budget, that these are all income to be taxed, IT will be there, these are all in all budgets. Tomorrow, if the paradigm or direction is laid down, I think the nation mentally is ready for change.
The milestone approach.
Thank you, all of you. And what I wanted to say in the end has actually been said by Shabbar. Yes, we keep waiting for them to do something. Why don't we just do it and let them follow suit? Let's set a new trend. But let's see what the budget brings tomorrow. We'll discuss again and evaluate how things go. Tomorrow's perspective. Thank you tonight.